I think we can begin. Elakshi, you can go ahead.
First of all, good morning, everyone. So, I would like to introduce that we are very happy to host Ranjeet Pratap Singh, the founder and the CEO of Pratipil. Pratipil is an Indian online audiobook and the product of the self-publishing book in 12 languages. Also, they have over 3.2 lakh writers with the 25 million monthly active readers. The company also have another product, namely Pratipil Literature, Pratipil Comics, and the Pratipil FM. Also, not more than that, Ranjeet is a part of the February's 13 under 13 list entrepreneur India and 13 5 under. More than that, Piro of Pratipil, Ranjeet worked at the word of in the sector of marketing, retail, and the channel sales. He was awarded Bharatiya scholarships and TMI scholarship during his MBA days. Pratipil recently raised 48 million in funding in its series D round with the lead of South Korea gaming company is a cartoon, and the brand also acquired IVM broadcast. Not more than that, I really wanted to share your experience and about your journey, and please feel to stage ours. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here and for your kind words. Happy to take it forward.
Thank you, Ranjeet. So moving forward, I'd like to know about your early life. First of all, if you can walk us through how was your journey before building Pratilipi?
So I was born in a very small village, less than 1,000 population village in Raipur, Uttar Pradesh. My father was in army. Rest of the family is mostly farmers. With my father, I lived at different places in the country till I was in class 6. From class 7th onwards, my mom used to stay with me in Raipur city, which is like 15 kilometers from my village, to go through my schooling and all. After that, I did my undergraduate in computer science engineering from KIT Bhubaneswar, and then I did my MBA from Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi. I worked at Vodafone for a couple of years, and then I quit my job as it felt like it was a little too easy. And when you are 24, 25, you generally don't want to work at something which seems easy and comfortable. So I roamed around the country for 4 months trying to decide what to do next. And that is when we started building.
So when you started doing your MBA, then I think you went to Vodafone and worked for a few years. Then how was the leap? I mean, taking a leap from a company, working on a company, obviously you were 24, 25 at that age. So what was the thought behind your mind that you are going to build a startup? In which space? Were you like clear that this is the space that you are going to build? This is Pratilipi that you are going to build? You had an idea, or how was it like?
So actually, I was not planning to build a startup. My plan A was to actually find a founder that I thought was smarter and more driven than me, and then basically beg them for a job. So as I was saying earlier, right, like I have been a computer science engineer by training. Then I worked at Citi for about 3 months in their strategy vertical. Then at Vodafone, I did stints in marketing, retail, as well as sales. So it was essentially like I can do a little bit of everything. So the plan was not to build a startup. The plan was to basically find a founder that I really liked and then kind of do a job with them. It did not really matter what kind of job. It was just like working with smart people, doing something which is hard and challenging, having fun. Met a lot of founders, liked some, just did not like anybody enough to say, I want to work with you. And that is how we decided to build. But that was not really.
That's great. So moving forward, I'd like to know what was the initial days of Pratilipi? How was it like when you figured out that this is something that I want to work on? How did you go about acquiring your initial set of users, even structuring the initial sort of things? How was the 0 to 1 journey of Pratilipi?
So we were fairly confident that the problem seemed worth solving to us, but we were not really sure that what is going to be the right solution, especially because nobody really had done what we were doing either in India or actually globally. If you look at it as a whole of what we have been trying to do and not just the literature part. So I think our first premise at that point was just to kind of start small and try and figure out as quickly as possible that we are moving in the right direction and then keep on iterating from there. Instead of like trying to say that, okay, this is the solution and this is what we are going to do. We started by saying, okay, this is the problem. We'll try out different solutions. We'll see which one works best, which is why we decided to kind of not take too much time in building a product. So we launched our website in a beta version within a month of starting to build Pratilipi. We did not even incorporate the company for about 7-8 months because we were not sure what the right solution. So the first thing that we did was, even before deciding to build Pratilipi, was to try and figure out if it is a problem worth solving. So we spoke with about 350, 400 odd writers, and then again 300 odd readers, and understood like what their pain points are. Why does this problem exist in the first place? What we can do so that their problems are resolved. So when we decided to finally pursue this, the first thing that we did was we went out to these writers themselves and we told them that this is what we are building, and would you want to kind of come on board? Some people said yes, a lot of people said no. So we tried to understand why they are saying no, and generally the answer was that, like, because you don't have any readers, so it's not worth my time to basically build a profile, upload content, any of that stuff. So okay, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is say yes, we will make your profiles, we'll upload your content, we'll do whatever it takes to make you successful. So this is how we got our first 100 or 150 odd writers. Then we primarily focused on just providing the best user experience. And when I say user experience, I don't just mean product, I mean like everything combined to our readers and writers, and just take it from there. So that's what we initially did.
Got it. So in the initial days, what sort of problems did you face in terms of talking to the users? How did you even talk to these users? Like you mentioned, you went to them asking them to upload their profile, create their profile over there, and face some no as well. So how did you figure out that this is something which is a genuine problem that these folks are facing and then trying to solve? So because in the early stages, most of the entrepreneurs face issue while talking to the users. So how did you do that in your?
So my father's elder brother is a writer. So like generally what happens is that engineers know other engineers, doctors know other doctors, cricketers know other cricketers, and really writers know other writers. So the first thing that we did was we organized a poetry event in my hometown, where my uncle basically invited his writer friends. So this is how I got to meet the first maybe 30, 40 writers. And then I just asked them that, who are your writer friends that I can go and talk to? So these 30, 40 people introduced me to another, then they introduced me to another 200 people, then they introduced me to another 50, 60 people. So it was basically just reaching out to the first 20 people and then asking them for connecting with other writers. And that is how I got to the first 350, 400 odd people.
Great. And being a founder, we always feel like we are building the right solution, even while talking to the users. Even with my first startup, I was facing that problem. While talking to them, I always tried to tell my assumptions and assume that they are actually validated. The users are actually following that. So did you like face any sort of those issues in the initial days, like taking your assumptions and?
Yes and no. Generally, I believe that writers may not always, when I say writers, I mean actually any kind of users, they usually know what their problems are, but they would not usually be able to put it in a actionable manner that, okay, this is what my problem is, this is what the solution should. So for example, very famously, Henry Ford, who started Ford Motor Company, basically used to say, and that's probably not true, but at least that's a legend, that if I asked my users what did they want, they would have said faster horses, because car as a concept simply did not exist. So I think it's not that people give you exact answers. It's more like people talk in terms of what problems do they have. And then it's your job as either a product manager or founder, depending on the context, to essentially try and distill it down into more actionable. So we were not focused on whether that this is my solution, are you interested in that? We were more interested, we were talking to these people in terms of like, what are your actual pain points? And we would have gotten a list of, let's say, 70, 80 things that they would have. Then we sat down and we tried to figure out, okay, what are the real problems out of these 70, 80 things? Like, can we basically distill them down into 3 or 4 actionable points? So this is what we focused on when we were conducting our user interviews. It was not about like, okay, this is my solution, what do you think about it?
Makes sense. So moving ahead, how did you figure out your solution, like the platform that you have built right now, so many users right now? What was the journey from after going 0 to 1, after figuring out that initial stages? What is the journey after?
I think we have always considered that, we don't know what is going to work. We have never really said that we have PMF. We have never really said that this is the right solution. Our approach has always been iterative, where we have said, okay, this is our first hypothesis. This is what we think is going to work. Let's build this, try it out. Let's see how users react to that. And then like every week, every month, we'll basically iterate on the top of that. So every time we learn a little bit more, which could be either by talking to users or which could be by looking at data, we'll basically come up with a new hypothesis, and according to that hypothesis, we'll tweak the product, we'll tweak the offering and see how that works. So our approach to company building has always been very, very iterative. And we have never really believed that we know what the answer is. It has always been that we'll let the market and our users teach us what to build, how to build it, what the value proposition should be, and so on.
Makes sense, very candid. And as you are in the very later stage of a startup, you have already raised your later series stages. So what was your first fundraising round was like? What sort of traction did you have? How were you able to pull that out initially?
Honest answer is that I wouldn't remember exactly what the numbers were. But in the beginning time, for example, we did not really focus on fundraise at all. I just kept on borrowing money from my friends. And remember that this was the time when the company was not even incorporated. So it was not loan to company. It was more like loan to me from my, and we'll utilize that money to basically pay salaries, pay for server infrastructure and so on. So this is what we did for quite some time. Then we raised a small 30 lakh round from Times Internet back in, I think, March, April 2015. That got over pretty quickly. So I again kept on borrowing money from my friends. And then I think towards Feb or March 2016 is when we raised our first institutional round of $1 million led by Nexus. I want to say roughly we had maybe about 400, 500,000 monthly active users, but I won't remember for sure.
Got it. And moving ahead, how was your journey after raising those initial rounds and moving forward, structuring the team as well? Like you already have like 180 or some members right now, though we don't judge a startup based on their employee for sure. But still, how were the initial days of having a few members and then taking forward? How was your team structured initially and how you took it forward?
I think initially there wasn't really any structure. Initially, it was more like just get a group of people who are smart, who are hardworking, who want to take high ownership, and then basically give them a lot of freedom, give them a lot of ownership in terms of what they want to do, how they want to do, to make sure that both they are learning and growing at a fast pace and that it benefits the company as well. So there wasn't really too much of a structure, so to speak. And people will do whatever needed to be done. So we'll have a couple of engineers, we'll have a couple of customer service folks, we'll have a couple of business folks, and everybody would do a little bit. I think we have tried to retain that culture to a very, very large degree even today. But obviously, as the team size grows, as well as the business complexity grows, there has to be some structure. So now, for example, we have a VP engineer who basically handles engineering end to end. Similarly, we have a head of product who handles product related decisions. We actually have a finance function, a legal function, so on and so forth. But we have still tried to maintain that same culture where people don't have to follow a rigid rule of role that, okay, this is my job, this is somebody else's job. We still encourage and we still expect people to kind of try and pick whatever they think is going to be the best value for their time, which could be either in terms of like whether it's good for the company or it could be just because it's good for your own learning, your own growth, and that we believe would be good for companies' future. That's how we have always operated. That's how we still operate.
Makes sense. So what is the roadmap ahead for Pratilipi? Already have done like bunch of rounds, good product market fit, bunch of users actually love the product that you already have. So what is the future roadmap for you? How do you think like this?
So primarily, I think we'll just continue to do what we have done till now. It's just that it's slightly larger scale. So for example, let's say 5 years back, we had one language, one format. Maybe about, let's say 2 years back, we had expanded our main product into 12 languages, but it was still just one product. Now we have 5 different products. We have 12 languages on the core product, but multiple languages on other formats as well. I think going forward, we'll just be doing the same thing at a bigger scale. So like, how do we do this for, let's say 10 formats, 3 geography, 15, 20, 25 languages? Initially, we had, let's say 5 people who started, then we had 10, 20, 50, 100. Today, we are about 150 people. So how do you maintain the same sort of culture when you are like 500 people? So I think the focus is largely going to be just doing the same things that we have done, just on a slightly bigger scale, and changing or evolving whatever it takes to basically evolve that to work at that stage.
Got it. Right. So one more interesting question that recently came to my mind was that when you got like one language, good product market fit over there, people love that product. How was your scaling journey? Was it very smooth, like just hiring more folks and going to more languages, going to more geographies, or did you face any challenges over there?
As I said earlier, right, like our approach has always been very iterative, and we have not really tried to solve any problem by throwing either money or people at it. Generally, the approach has always been to kind of keep a relatively lean team and basically give them a lot of independence and let them try and figure out what works best. So growth would, like from the outside, will look like, okay, company has grown 4x, 5x every year. But that's not how it looks like when you look at it deeply. So when you look at it on a month-on-month basis, for example, or a week-on-week basis, there would be weeks where we have grown like 40%. There have been weeks where we have grown like 0%. There have been weeks where we have degrown 5%. But it's just that like every time you face a challenge, you try out 5 other things, and one of those works, 4 of them don't work. So over a period of time, it kind of starts working. But it's not really a. So a lot of times people are looking for magic pills that this was a problem, you had this magical solution, and everything kind of worked out nice. That's not how real life works. That's not how real businesses are built. So there'll always be challenges, and you will not really know what the magical pill is. It's more about trying out 5 different things and seeing which one actually works.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Now moving more towards your personal life sort of thing, as in
I
what sort of
have one
goals do
question.
you?
I have one last. I really wanted to know about your Vodafone experience when you done your sales and explore things in marketing, because side by side you manage that also. So I really wanted to know that experience about your Vodafone journey and then your scholarships journey about.
Scholarships was fairly simple. Coming from a lower middle class family, at that time money was important. I just applied for some scholarships, won some, lost. That is that. There's nothing more to say. Vodafone journey, I think, was good and bad, but mostly bad. So India, in particular, and Asia in general, are very hierarchical countries where we assume that somebody who's older, somebody who's more experienced, always knows more. And telecom, in particular, especially for sales, is not a good industry to work in the sense that there's a lot of fudging that happens, a lot of shouting, a lot of abusing that goes on, and people assume that this is how sales is always. I have always been more of an idealistic person where I believe that the world should be a certain way, and then you should try and do whatever you can to kind of make the world in that. So, for example, in my first stint at Vodafone, people did not really give me any independent work because they said, like, you're 22, and like at somebody who is 22, I can't trust you to manage like 2-3 crores a month in terms of targets. You should just work with other people, shadow them, and learn from them. And that did not really work for somebody like me, who has always been very independent minded, as against like following what other people say should be there. So this was the first 6 months or so. The next 6 months got a little better, but still not enough. But after that, I got my first independent stint, which was in Ahmedabad. This was basically where I got my own targets, I think about 14, 15 crores a month. And it was basically, I had a direct team of about 7 people and indirectly about 100 people with whom I had to work and kind of get to those targets. The problem, of course, was that a lot of these people who were reporting to me were people who had a lot more experience than I did. And they would basically say that you're 23, like, what is it that you are going to do better than I am? The only reason why you are my boss is because you went to a better base school, and that's that. So my approach there basically was fairly simple. I said, you obviously know how to do sales better than I do, and let me not kind of meddle into that. What I will rather do is that I'll manage everything else. Like, you don't have to worry about, for example, your bosses calling you or my boss is calling you and kind of talking about why you haven't done this, why you haven't done that. All of that I'll manage. You don't have to worry about your variable components. In sales, there's usually, like, if you do your job well, you make a lot more money on incentives versus on salary. I said, like, I'll try to make sure that you make the highest amount of incentives or variable component than anybody else in the company. I'll make sure that, like, your actual cash in hand is higher than for any other, because I'll manage like what you need to do to get to that. This is how I did my job for the first 2, 3, 4 months. This is how I got some respect and trust from these. And my second thing basically was, okay, like, everybody has different aspirations in life. So I talk to people, spend a lot of time with them one-on-one basis to try and understand what their aspirations are. So for example, some people wanted to get a promotion. Some people wanted to improve on certain areas. Some people had a like loan on their head, so they wanted to have like maximum amount of variable cash that they could make so that they could pay off that loan. And then I'll have individualized, personalized plans for each of these team members to try and make sure that they can get to whatever they want. So this is what I largely focused on during my like working time at Vodafone.
So you think that sales marketing is the biggest thing or more hectic thing in India? If we no.
So it depends on product, depends on industry. So there are products and industries where it's about engineering. There are products and industries where it's about marketing. There are products and industries where it's like sales is more important. There are products and industries where research is more important. I don't think you can paint a simple brush and say that finance is better than a strategy, or strategy is better than marketing, or marketing is better than sales. Depends on what you're. And again, in any company, all of these are important. It's just that in certain industries or certain companies, certain roles would be more important than others. Like, for example, for FMCG, marketing would be a lot more important. For something like insurance, sales would be a lot more important. For something like Zomato, operations would be a lot more important. For something like WhatsApp, engineering would be a lot more important. So it depends on company, industry to industry.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ranjeet. So moving ahead, I'd like to know from the context of That Will Never Work, Netflix book. What was the initial days of Pratilipi was like? Did you like consult your users? Did you like consult any of your friends who told you that this will not work in the long run?
So we will try and speak to everyone, like whoever was willing to talk to us. This will include our users. This will include our friends. This will include investors. This will include potential team members. This will include the people who are called like experts in some way, and everybody would say different things. Most people would say that it's not going to work for different reasons. The purpose of us talking to them was not necessarily of getting an answer. It's more about getting a perspective, like what do they think are the biggest. I don't care if you say it's going to work or it's not going to work. I'm more interested in knowing if you think it's not going to work, and what are the 5 reasons or whatever 2 reasons of why it's not going. Then we'll try and make sure have we thought those risks through. So like most things in life are not black and white. Most things in life are 100 freaking shades of gray. The point essentially is to try and figure out what is the most probabilistic way of making this. So that was our thesis of talking to people. That's something that we have always done. We still do. We try and talk to as many people as possible in terms of at least our users, but also like potential team members, potential investors.
Moving ahead, I'd like to know what was the effect of COVID in your business? Like the content creation market was like booming, got new shades, new pivots. So what was the impact of COVID in your business? How did you work?
So for Pratilipi, or for purely digital businesses like Pratilipi or Xartup or Facebook, COVID did not really have as much of an impact as it would on like physical businesses, like for example, delivery or e-commerce. I think for all of digital businesses, there was a small uptick. In some domains, it was bigger versus some domains, it was smaller. For us, it was maybe about a 20% extra uptick compared to the normal rate of growth that we, any which case, always have. So that is that from a business perspective. I think a much bigger problem was from a team and like team morale and culture perspective. Two parts here. Number one, that like even though we did not go through a bad time, a lot of people, like their friends, their families, their relatives went through very, very difficult times in terms of economic uncertainty. And then, of course, the second part was the health uncertainty. Like different people went through COVID infection on their own, but almost everybody knew somebody in their own direct family or direct close friends who went through those difficult times. So it was very, very easy. Very, very difficult for people to kind of handle this mentally. And it did not help that like they did not have the same support system of working with their colleagues, talking to them and going out with them and all of that. So I think mentally from a team perspective, it was a very, very difficult time. And I don't think it's still back to normal yet. I don't know when it will be back to normal. But from a business perspective, it was maybe a small positive, just like any other digital company.
So moving ahead, I'd like to know what will be your advice to reach the masses in terms of building a consumer product. Pratilipi has been quite successful in reaching out to different geographies, reaching out to different languages even. So what will be your advice to founders who are building consumer products to go from 0 to 1? And
so most important bits would be two things. In consumer internet, usually the cost of making a mistake is fairly low. One, and second, consumers don't have a lot of time to give you because they have so many options. And these things basically boil down to two specific actionable pieces of advice. The first one is that because cost of making a mistake is low, generally it's a good idea to be iterative. Instead of like trying to find the perfect solution, try to go out with a solution that you think might work and see how users react to that, and then iterate on it. Versus let's say healthcare, cost of making a mistake could be that somebody dies. Like you can't afford to take that risk. Or for an enterprise company, cost of making a mistake could be that you lose out on your biggest customer, and that means like $1 million in revenue. You can't afford to do that. So in enterprise or healthcare or a lot of other sectors, you have to be very, very conscious about what you are building, how you are distributing, and all of that. In consumer internet, because the cost of making a mistake is low, which means that moving quickly, iterating quickly is a much. Coming to point two, which was that consumers have a lot of choices and they don't really want to give you too much of their time, and they don't want to spend too much time thinking or making a decision. Means that it's a really, really important idea that you be as focused in your early days as possible. Don't try to do 5 things. Like if you can't explain your idea in 1 or 2 lines, for consumer internet, it doesn't work. For enterprise, it might, because users are going to pay you money. So they are going to be more thoughtful about what they are paying about money. Consumer internet, the idea has to be very, very simple. And like it's easy to kind of fall into that bucket where we think, okay, I'll also do this, I'll also do this, I'll also do this. That's almost always a terrible idea. Look at some of the best companies in consumer internet. Google, for example, did just search for like 6 years before they started doing anything. Amazon sold books for 2.5 years before they started doing anything else. Uber operated just in San Francisco for 2 years before they started expanding even job. And that's mandatory for you to do in consumer internet, because otherwise you can't win. Otherwise, consumers are not going to care that you are. These would probably be two specific pieces.
Makes sense. So from your experience, there is something called as the shiny ball syndrome, right? The entrepreneurs always chase the shiny ball, that whatever they are working is not good and there is better things to do in their life or in their product or maybe in their marketing strategy. So did you face any issues similar to that in your initial stages or even right now? And how did you confront those?
Personally, no, because I think I have been aware of this and consciously working on this for a long time. But I think a lot of team members go through the same phase, and at different times there will be different things which become fad. Like there was a time, for example, when everybody was talking about chatbots, and a lot of my PMs essentially started thinking we should also have a chatbot on Facebook, a chatbot on WhatsApp, a chatbot on itself, and so on. And that's very natural human tendency, because it seems like, okay, everybody's talking about it, so we should also maybe try something out. And then at different times it would be different things, right? Like, so for example, 2-3 years back there was a lot of talk about AI, and even for things where, like, I don't really like the word AI because that doesn't really mean anything, but let's just call it machine learning or deep learning basis, whatever you are doing. So there are use cases where machine learning is the right way to go about it. There are use cases where probably just a simple database works better. There are cases where actually manually just doing something, but because everybody else is talking about AI, so you start thinking of your business not in terms of consumers but in terms of technology. Today it could be blockchain, for example, that okay, we should also use blockchain in this or that and that and that. Again, there are use cases where blockchain is the right solution. There are use cases where blockchain is not. So like, you have to start by focusing on the customer and then see what technology serves your customer best, as against starting with technology and then trying to think, okay, how do I force fit this technology to this problem state? So I think different team members have gone through that multiple times, and that still happens. It's my job to kind of bring them back to focus on the consumer instead of focusing on technology, and then work backwards from consumers and see what to build and how to build that.
Thank you so much, Ranjeet, for these.